Hi everyone. Good afternoon. It just turned 12. Thank you guys for taking time from your busy schedule. I know we're all going around. We all have our own things to do, and I'm happy we could all come together and, learn a bit about this amazing topic. I'm the current social media intern for Hana House, and I can talk more a bit about that. Hana House was founded in 2015 by the co-founder of SAP, which is a global tech company. His vision was his goal was to create a sense of community and a climate that actively promotes creativity, new ideas, and just exchanging and meeting new people. And he believed that these were essential requirements to discover new ideas and bring them forward and drive innovation. We opened our second location here in Newport Beach in 2019, and since then it's been just an amazing co-working space that brings people together. And we host these fun events like the one we're about to participate in, and I'm very excited.
Thank you so much, Jack. And thank you to all of you who are joining us live. In addition to today's live conversation, the Business Bite series is recorded and shared through both the SAP HANA House and on its Access digital platforms. So if you find today's content valuable, we do hope that you'll share it with your community and share the resource. This is a free community resource, and we know some of you are joining from around the world. We want to keep today engaging and inclusive. So please be sure to say hello in the chat, share in the chat where you're tuning into from the world and what brought you to today's topic so we can customize a bit of our questions. If throughout today's fireside chat you have any questions that come up, please feel free to ping them in the chat, and there will be a Q&A period at the end. We really appreciate having you here, and I am incredibly excited about our speakers for today's session. So with no further ado, I'd like to go ahead and welcome our first speaker, Shelly Icona. Shelly, please share a bit about your professional background and your connection to the series and to today's talk.
Hi, everyone. It's great to see you all here today. Thank you for joining us, and big thanks to Jack and Hana House for co-sponsoring this video series called Business Bites. We launched Business Bites a few years back with Hana House, and it's been an ongoing series. We're really excited. We have great programming happening this year, and this is the first talk of 2024. I'm Shelly Icona. I'm the founder of On Its Axis. I started On Its Axis in 2009, long time ago, when I was at Yahoo, really thinking about ways to help companies build better products. Today, we're a product, people, and process innovation company. We work with large corporate clients, and we also have a focus on nonprofit. We help privately held companies as well, and are relaunching our accelerator later this summer. My background was in engineering. I started out as a front-end web developer, database development, and moved into project management, then product management, and eventually landed on building out my company On Its Axis, which I co-lead with Kelly O'Connell, who's on the call today. I'm super excited to be speaking to you about a topic that's near and dear to my heart around product. And I'm speaking to you today with someone I've collaborated with, Kristen Norton. I'd love for Kristen to introduce herself. We've worked together in the past, and I just had a fantastic experience working alongside Kristen. Kristen?
Thank you. Yes. So I'm Kristen Norton. I'm a CEO of Green Room Technologies. We are a health tech strategy consulting firm here in Austin, Texas. And I'm also a founding board member of Austin MedTech Connect, which has a similar mission of helping medical technologies get to market. And I do want to thank Hana House and On Its Axis for having me here. I've been a frequent visitor to the Business Bites, and it's nice to actually be participating today with you guys. And as Shelly said, although Green Room has been a partner with On Its Axis for several years now, I've known the On Its Axis team for years prior to that, and I've worked together in several capacities, and it's always a pleasure to be able to get together. And I know part of today is around adjacency and tools and techniques and strategies for using adjacency to build your own innovation. But in thinking about it, I just realized how pervasive the term really is, or the concept is. Even when I was thinking about my own background, I was thinking how adjacency really plays a part in that. And I think in all of our career and educational pathways. So case in point, I started my career as a cardiovascular scientist. And then when I was in my lab, though, I found myself going down to the adjacent labs and asking many of my colleagues, what are they working on? How can it help my research? How can I help yours? How can we get together and help bring these products into the world in ways that they could help people? And really from there, I've realized I've made, horizontal or lateral moves as well as vertical moves to adjacent spaces that help me hone in to come to the career where I am now, which specifically again is Green Room Technologies, where I work alongside two of my favorite people and business partners, Dr. Bob Teague and Daryl Welk, to help medical devices and software successfully get to market. And I'm really excited to be a part of the conversation about adjacency in that capacity today.
Well, if everyone who's on today's call hasn't noted it already, this is a very enthusiastic pair of experts that I have the pleasure of speaking with. And the topic that we're talking about, product adjacency, is a concept that may not be familiar. We've talked in the past about brand and marketing and customer personas and customer success, all things that people are familiar with broadly within business or common business topics. So we think about product adjacency. It might seem a little esoteric or as a new concept to some of our audience members. So Shelley, I'm going to come to you first, and I'm going to ask you to describe product adjacency as if you were talking to a group of students. Think about a group of middle school students and talk to them about what product adjacency is.
Well, it's funny, Kelly, that when you posed this question in prepping us for today, it was really funny that I actually had this conversation, not using that language, of course, with one of my nieces around why do companies do things like this? So she asked the question, yeah, my mom builds Legos. My family is really big into architecture and design, and they build the Lego models, and they buy those models. And I said, well, you'll have to come out to Legoland. And she said, well, what's Legoland? I said, well, it's actually a theme park dedicated to the Lego brand. What's a brand? Then I went through that with her and explained that in order to reach its customers in a really compelling and fun way, it built out a theme park and designed characters and rides similar to the sets that people purchase online and build at home. And so I think that would be, if I were talking to a younger generation, that's exactly what I would say. We know that product adjacency means a lot of different things. It means different channels, different maybe product lines that companies and brands pursue. But I think that would be probably the simplest explanation that I could give from a recent experience.
Thank you, Shelley. Kristen, I'm going to send over the same question to you. Is there anything that you would add or any different way you might approach this topic with that group of middle school students?
Well, my partner is a coach and teacher of kids in this age group. And so interacting with him about his interactions with them, I realized TikTok is everything, right? So I started my conversation with TikTok. And I was thinking, if you had your personal product being perhaps you can sing or dance, then that becomes a product that you could then apply to different adjacencies. So if you find out that you really love to do that on TikTok, perhaps you could take that into your church choir or church dance program, or into the community, or some other vehicle like that. Or even perhaps you could use it to coach other children and make some cash. Teach them how to use that personal product or service that you offer, and how you could use that as an adjacent market. And then also the other one for kids a little bit lower level in age would be the Play-Doh example. So I read that Play-Doh was originally created in order to clean the walls. It's got a little bit of abrasiveness, but it's malleable and it doesn't scratch. And sort of like a magic eraser today, you can use it to clean walls. And a teacher was using it to do so and realized how fun it was to play with and began using it in her classroom and happened to be in the community in which Play-Doh was created. And then it just grew from there. And that became its number one selling use versus its original intended use. And I think that's often what happens. You find an adjacent market that may end up growing and being more valuable to the community than the one you originally planned.
This is a wonderful pair of explanations. And I think it really begs for us to dive a little deeper into this idea of commercializing this. So it's one thing to think about product adjacency, to think about who else might I serve with my skill, like dancing, or how else might I reach my audience, or what things based on my skill might I also step into that are really logical. So I'm a great dancer, maybe I go into musical theater, just using that example, or I'm creating fun and entertainment for children at home. Maybe I create an educational and entertainment theme park in the case of Legoland. But let's dive a bit deeper into this idea of how do we translate that into commercial innovation, into revenue streams, and really thinking about the idea of this still as if you're talking to that middle school class. Why is innovation adjacency important, and particularly important now in the time that we're in today? And Shelley, you first.
Sure. So I think even young people understand how fast we're moving today. And I think the recent COVID pandemic opened up a lot of our eyes to that. So markets are changing, there's a lot of volatility. And in order to have sort of long-term, what I say, resilience and relevance in the market, you need to be thinking about how you serve customers and serving them in different ways and meeting them where they are. And so it's not only is it about long-term resilience, but it's about ensuring profitability and going after new opportunities. So when I think about commercial innovation, one example might be, you can look at things that are industry-wide that sort of happened over time. We can look at, historically, we have paper currency. I mean, I don't know the last time I had a dollar bill in my purse. Like, that just doesn't exist for me anymore. Everything is digital. That was a transition that happened over the course of my lifetime, where now we have the concept of a digital wallet. And if we were talking to middle school students, a lot of them today understand that. They understand the concept of a digital wallet. They understand the concept of the emergence of cryptocurrency and why that might exist to open up opportunities for those who don't have access. I think about commercial innovation as something that is necessary, and I believe that product adjacency and really looking at, as a company, how we can expand upon our portfolio is really the future. It's really where we need to play. And as Kristen and I were chatting before everyone came on for today's call, we were saying how we don't think about product adjacency very much. Like, that's not a language maybe we use in our work life, but it's everywhere. It's everywhere we look, and it happens at a really rapid pace. And it's something that I think companies could bring that language into their organization more and infuse that into their workforce. I think it's really important as we move ahead.
Thank you, Shelley. Kristen, just like last time, I'm going to come over to you with this. What would you say around the topic of commercial innovation?
I thought this question was interesting because really putting the words commercial innovation together. So, their innovation is everywhere. It's a word we use all the time these days. And as a scientist and lifelong learner, I love the concept of innovation. But when you say commercial innovation, or you think about a business, it's not just innovating for the act of innovating. It's innovating for the success of your product, of your service, of your brand, of your company ultimately. So it's innovation for a purpose. And one of the reasons we do it is because it can be less expensive to do something in an adjacent manner than it can be to start fresh. It's basically not, you're not starting from scratch. You're creating new business from an existing asset. And this reminded me of another example. My partner Bob and I were at an event the other night for Austin MedTech Connect, and it was at a brew pub / bakery. And we were like, wow, that's a really good example of adjacency. So if you are in a brew pub, or say you're at a bakery and you're making bread, you have yeast, you have some kind of grain, you have some kind of sugar, you have some kind of equipment. And all of that is the same thing that goes into beer. So bread and beer could be adjacent products using your existing assets. And so I think that's an important concept, and that it can decrease the cost of reaching new markets. But I also think that I would like to explain that assets can be a lot of things. As Shelley was saying, it can be your product, it could be your service, it could be your brand, it could be your expertise, it could be your ingredients like the beer and the bread, and all of those things can be taken to new markets or help you get to new markets in a less expensive or less effortful way. And that new markets could come to you from new geographies. It could come from new channels to new customers. It could be applying your brand to another product. So it's not just product innovation or market innovation, it could be your brand. But you have to be careful, because products like Kellogg, or companies like Kellogg, is a huge company who's had great success, but their brand allowed them to have sort of an expertise, say, in protein-based cereals, Special K. And so from that, they entered the vitamin water market with that brand, thinking they could apply that brand to that. And it quickly went away. Their brand did not work in that space as well. So you got to be clear why you're doing the innovation. It's not innovation for itself. It's not innovation for brand hubris. It's innovation to make your business succeed. So you need to think about what you expect to get out of this, and the metrics and sort of the scientific rigor around it is a caution that I would throw.
I think those are both really outstanding examples. And when I framed this question, I remembered baking with my family, and I thought baking, so I love your bread and beer analogy. Around the holidays, we would often make pies. And one of my favorite aspects after the holidays that we would only ever get was the extra pie crust would be twisted into these cinnamon twists.
Yes.
And that cinnamon twist is just something that I absolutely loved, and is a treat in and of itself. In fact, that I craved throughout the whole year. But we only ever got it when it was like around a pie baking time. But you could have a business just off of those extra pie crust cinnamon twists. And I think the scarcity piece is an important piece of innovation. It's also about shared resources. And so I really love those examples. Now, I want to talk about innovation in practice. And so that baking idea is one concept of innovation in practice. It's really simple. We didn't waste food in my family, so we found a way to turn the scraps of a pie crust into a really tasty treat we could eat around the holiday. And innovation is in some ways an opportunity for companies to think about, beyond their core services, what additional resources are being underutilized within their workforce? Or is there a way to build capacity that helps to resist disruption? So this is a really important concept that helps to build, let's call it a seawall, an ocean wall, for those of you who are coastal, against the influx of people who are trying to put your brand out of business by serving your existing customer base in a new and different way. And so it's using your existing brand to stay ahead of that curve. And many of you may be familiar with an industry that's being really rapidly disrupted right now. So this is a chance for those of you who are live on chat. Weigh in chat on what industry do you think right now is being really disrupted by innovation? I'm going to give you all just a moment to do that. So if you're here on chat, weigh in on industries being disrupted by innovation. And I'm hoping a few of you and I'm seeing a few of you, are starting to talk about this, this idea of industries being disrupted by innovation. One that you may be hearing about a lot, we've seen a number of layoffs, we've seen a number of closures. It's the retail industry. And so when we think about the retail sector, growing up, I would buy the ingredients to that baking at a physical store, supermarkets. And there were a lot of different types of supermarkets that you could go into. There were a lot of different type of department stores that you could go into. But we've recently seen a number of department stores that have been really struggling. Now, today's innovation and practice example I'm going to share is a store that is a manufacturer and retail brand that's an American brand, been in business over 100 years, that's done some really interesting things in adjacent innovation to help fend off disruption. And that brand is LL Bean. So anybody here familiar with LL Bean? I'm looking for some nods. LL Bean is well known as a brand for their outdoor gear. So they really niched. In a time of group department stores, LL Bean said, we are good at a very specific audience. We are incredible at reaching people who love outdoor activities, kayaking, snowshoeing, hiking, biking. These types of activities are going to be our niche, fishing, and they reach this audience. But in a market where we can simply go to Amazon or even have direct delivery or purchase off of TikTok videos, products, LL Bean has to be thinking, what do we do to remain a trusted brand in this audience? And what do we do to build, as Shelley talked about, resilience in the marketplace? And I'm going to share with you a really interesting innovation adjacency that they established back at the start of their having to shut down their physical stores. And this was in 2019. They were shutting down their physical stores because of COVID quarantines, the shelter in place.
What if open floor plans were truly open? Is blue sky thinking better done under a clear blue sky? Americans spend 95% of our lives indoors, half of which are spent working. Yet research shows that when we spend time outside, we're more productive, more creative, and happier. So if it's outside, we're all in. Because at LL Bean, we believe not a day should go by without letting the outdoors work its magic on you. That's why we started a movement, published a new study on outdoor workplace dynamics, partnered with one of the largest co-working disruptors, and launched our first ever outdoor co-working space to help everyone be an outsider at work. It only takes a few minutes each day, and it's changing the way people work. So whether your office is in the shadows of skyscrapers or spruce trees, we invite you to join us. How? Simple everyday steps can make a big difference. Ditch the conference room for a blue sky brainstorm. Invite a coworker out for alfresco feedback. And make your next interview an outer view. For more tips that can help you work outside every day, visit beanoutsideratwork.com, because on the inside, we're all outsiders.
So hopefully you all found that to be a very interesting presentation talking point. What I think is most interesting is that the most recent annual report for LL Bean, in spite of the disruption in their industry, shows that LL Bean had their third highest ever market revenue quarters, quarter over quarter throughout 2023. And so it's a really interesting topic because it allowed them to partner with another shared brand that's trusted around this idea of co-working. So they took somebody whose brand was co-working, and they took their brand of reaching and attracting that outdoor adventure persona, and they took it into a workplace and work solutions vertical. And so it's a really interesting example of brand and product adjacency, creating an entirely new innovation adjacent revenue stream for LL Bean. And I think it's a great example. But I want to come back to, oops, not trying to show you the presentation again. Sorry about that. Let's go down to the next one. And I'm going to come back to you, Shelley, and I'm going to ask you to share another example of product adjacency. So I shared the example of LL Bean. Is there another one you think of?
Yeah, I love that. And I'm surprised that I think the number was 95% of our time is spent indoors. That's amazing. That was so brand aligned too. That was really, they did such a great job of that. I think a great example of product adjacency, because it's really about kind of where you serve and how you serve. So I have two that I think are really interesting. One is simple in terms of location and what we call channel, marketing channel, is Warby Parker. So I was introduced to Warby Parker like many years ago in Venice Beach, California, when they had like a pop-up truck, and the tagline was something about seeing better, and it drew me in. I was working at the time, and I drew me in and took a look, and I thought, these are glasses? I'm so confused. It's an eyewear company. I didn't know what it was, but I think reaching audiences where they are, where they spend their time was really strategic. So I think that was one type of adjacency. A really fascinating adjacency that I learned about, I think in 2018, was when Farmers Insurance developed a completely new insurance product geared to the millennial market. And so they did all the right things, pulling together an innovation lab off-site, kind of away from the everyday, and they pulled together an innovation team to reimagine kind of how they serve customers. So they took their bread and butter and what they know in terms of insurance products, and they said, what's an underserved or underaddressed market that we can reach and perhaps deliver a solution to them with our products and services that are just a little bit different, but really meet their needs. And they learned how to build a more customizable product, a more simplified and affordable and sort of easy to understand product that really resonated with their target market. And it's called Toggle. And it's one of those great stories about innovation and product adjacency in a kind of unsexy market of insurance, that I think they did a really great job. And it was a new brand was developed, so you didn't necessarily know it was Farmers. I thought that was really bold and really courageous and probably risky, but it seems to have worked out for them.
Thank you, Shelley. I think those are great examples. And Kristen, I'm looking forward to hearing from you as well. So can you share for our audience a few examples?
Thank you for those examples, Shelley. So when I was thinking obviously about healthcare and health tech, because that's where we live. And I thought that one of the hugest examples, which I never had thought of in this way, is off-label drug use. I think we all know, for instance, common things like aspirin, they were approved by the FDA, and I'll talk more about regulatory later, but being approved by the FDA for pain and fever. But now I think it's used as commonly or more as a prophylactic or a risk mitigator for heart attacks. It can also be used for type 2 diabetes. Viagra was originally created related to angina and cardiovascular issues, and there was a certain side effect, and that became its biggest market. And now it's also come around full circle and being used in pulmonary hypertension. Mucinex is it's a mucus relieving medication, and that is being used to help treat infertility, to decrease the mucus lining, so that you can have fertilization occur. So there's a ton of things in healthcare where I don't really think I had thought about that terminology, but they're adjacent uses for a product that can then become the biggest use case. In our personal career in green rooms, different clients that we've been working with just lately, we have one company that has built a technology and service platform around remote patient monitoring and chronic care management. They're sending out a tablet and it has, tools on it and the ability to talk with providers and do surveys and get education, and found that another adjacent market was transitional care. So as you leave the hospital, if you give them the tablet then and apply it to transitional care, then they can keep it longer term for remote patient monitoring and chronic care management. And that has become an adjacent market that leads you into the primary market, which I think is cool. And then we have another client that has a heart rate and respiratory rate monitoring device. It's wireless. It sits up on the wall beside you and monitors you without any wires or anything, just watches you all day. And found so many different markets for that, including in the veterinary market. And that's another thing about healthcare. There's often veterinary or other types of markets that might not even be the, human health care market that you can expand upon. So I just think that the idea is something that we think about every day, but without using that terminology. And I think I'll be able to put that terminology into practice more often with our clients at Greenroom.
Thanks, Kristen. I want to come back to your example of off-use drug use and really touch on why that's so relevant to the commercialization element. As we know, for approvals, there's significant barriers in terms of cost. And so maybe if you could speak to that a little bit about why that is a helpful use in particular in the drug creation space.
Right, exactly. Yeah, the go-to-market process is one of the biggest pieces of that. It can be the biggest hurdle. The longest step is the regulatory process. That you have to, when you think about these different markets, you really have to think about the levers that can affect it, the cost, the regulatory implications, the effort and time that takes to acquire a customer. And so off-label drug use can be a way to get your drug into the market. The same thing with digital health. Really, digital health and medical devices are now merging with wearables and consumer devices. If you have a product that was a digital health device, or you were trying to go for something that would be used at a hospital or a practice, you can now today potentially make that a consumer wearable and get to a market in a way that doesn't require the same level of FDA clearance, and it will allow you to get to market faster. So time to market can be greatly reduced by considering adjacent markets, which I think is one of the neat things about today, and also one of the hurdles for us all to consider as we're thinking about where to go with our products.
Thank you so much, Kristen. I think these are such big talking points around why. And so hopefully if some of our guests that are on are product designers or developers or startup founders who are thinking about a product, you're imagining some of the product adjacency conversation we're having around that lean canvas that we've talked about on prior Business Bite sessions. And you're thinking about strategic partnerships, and you're thinking about your go-to-market channel, and you're thinking about your service obtainable markets, and how product adjacency can either expand or refine how you view and structure and plan for that lens. But also product adjacency can be something that can be incredibly valuable as it relates to change and responding to change, and can provide value, like we described with LL Bean, to well-established companies. LL Bean's over 100-year-old company that's thinking about how the industry change drives business decision making. It's no longer enough just to think about adjacently fixing your core business line, or thinking about pricing, or thinking about commercials, but change is driving innovation. And the idea behind change also means that there's a tremendous amount of opportunity in the marketplace for these established businesses. And the fact that many of these companies, 4.5 million firms representing over $10 trillion in the US alone, will transition leadership. There's a succession plan in place in the next decade. Think about that. 4.5 million firms, $10 trillion in business are transitioning leadership. And during these leadership transitions, as they're planning for succession, there's a really important element around that plan in thinking about what are your core revenue drivers? What is in that business model? What's on your lean canvas, whether you're a startup or a big company? And so, Shelley, coming back to you, since I know On Its Axis thinks a lot about succession planning, can you speak a bit to the opportunity that innovation adjacency presents to today's business owners?
Sure, Kelly. I like the setup. Thank you. That was great. I know I learned that I think in large companies, about 20% of their revenue tends to come from adjacency, which I don't know if that's, big or small, for them in particular. But I know having previously worked at a large companies, they always had the idea of 20% time to really have their internal employees think about innovation and think about ways that we could devise new ideas to serve the company, through lean ideas and startup ideas as well. I think innovation adjacencies are really important for companies to stay relevant and resilient, and that profit piece is so huge. And so that's why at On Its Axis, we love looking at what I call, and I hope this isn't offending anyone in these industries, but I call them unsexy markets. Like manufacturing to me in the past, it didn't seem to have a lot of innovation, but what we're seeing today is really remarkable. Take a mining company, for example, that typically thinks in terms of what physically it is putting out there. The opportunities for software, for AI, for building intelligence around its operation is often the first thing to look at in terms of what additional innovation can we provide to our customers, to our partners. And so I think companies really, whether you're small, private, large company, always be thinking about your customers and developing some sort of voice of the customer program internally. So how do we listen to our existing customers? What are they telling us and not telling us? And then who do we want to reach? Who are our target personas that exist that we might serve, or that we serve in a small way that we could expand upon in the future? And On Its Axis, we do a lot of the research and human-centered design work to come up with those ideas as we partner with companies to think about different ways they can serve. And then we also do the change management work, helping them become change agile as they start implementing the innovation. No one loves change, and I think that's why people are hesitant to introduce more than 20% into the portfolio. Imagine if we invested more time and energy into it and managed the risk, of course. I think it's the way that we're going to be operating in the future, out of market and economic need.
Thank you, Shelley. Kristen, coming over to you with exactly the same question. And we want to repeat these questions because it's different from the different perspective, just as innovation adjacency presents different opportunities. And so we'd love to know your thoughts on what the opportunity available is for the market.
Thank you. And I also appreciated the setup for the question, because it helped me even more formulate my thoughts leading into the discussion. And yours as well, Shelley. And I think from my perspective, I thought of several things in this area. So we work a lot within this field. Sensors, people have a sensor that tests for something, a heart rate, respiratory rate, blood alcohol content, you name it. And there's the idea that you could have a sensor, You could have a platform that would have that sensor or other sensors, and that whole thing together could be wrapped into a service. And I started thinking about the idea of adjacent channels for what you do. So if you're developing that sensor, you could elect to do the whole thing. You could have a sensor on a platform with a communications channel and a service, or you could just sell your sensor to somebody who already has that, or you could manufacture those sensors on bulk and send them out in another direction. I think there's a sliding scale of adjacency of where your interests and abilities and costs and regulatory levers live, and you can use those to decide really what you want to do. Do you want to be a sensor business, or do you want to be a full-on service that applies that sensor and technology enabled service? I think so. You think about the adjacencies of those, which makes me think again what we talked about a little while ago about how much health technologies are now really diving into the direct to consumer care business. You can, and there's platforms out there like Apple. So no longer do you have to do everything. Potentially you could sell your sensor to somebody like Apple, who could then use it, and they can do all this distribution, and you could go back and create a new technology in R&D. And so something about this reminds me, especially those stair letters, reminds me of the different places you can land as far as what kind of business you want to run, and what adjacent markets, channels, and strategies that you could take advantage of in order to get to market successfully. And this question also, in the same vein, reminded me of how often we talk about data in my company. Because people think about their product and they think they're going to sell it to a doctor's going to use it for XYZ. But today there's so much data involved. There's data related to that device itself. How is that device functioning? There's your operational data, both for you, how well are you selling that, how is that working, as well as for your customer. And then there's the clinical data that's related to all of that. And so sometimes your market, an adjacent market to your primary product could just be the data, the licensing of that data, with permissions and all of that, of course, and consent as needed. But I think data is a huge adjacent market for everybody in my field and most fields these days, especially reading all the examples. People talk about media and manufacturing and TV and all the different things. Data has become one of the most important adjacent markets, I think.
I think it's such an interesting topic and something we could spend so much time speaking to. And I think you both gave such wonderful examples. As I think about these 4.5 million firms, I think about the people side of the business. And in many of these companies that are privately held, there's a next generation that's thinking about taking over. And so what they're excited about as they take over the business may be different than the original founder vision for the business. And so thinking about building a startup within that privately held brand, and thinking about planning for succession while planning for revenue resilience is such a powerful use of adjacency. But also there are many companies that won't be taken over by employees through an ESOP or through familial transition, but they're looking to exit through an acquisition. And so making themselves attractive to private equity, thinking about how their company, their unique skills and aptitude fit into the business landscape of people who are potential acquirers before they need to put it up for sale is really important as part of that business model innovation. And so adjacency can be about direct to consumer. It can be about selling your company in a public market. And it's really about thinking about your unique value, thinking about your customers, and building in that human-centered design. And so with that, I'm going to ask for our final piece before we move to to our Q&A section, which is about how do we adopt a culture of innovation? So whether I'm a big company, a startup founder, whether I'm preparing to transition my company to a daughter or a son or a familial member, or I'm preparing to sell to PE, what is a tip for how to develop that culture of innovation within a workforce? And this time, Kristen, I'm coming to you first.
Okay, great. And I'm going to throw up maybe a different little spin on it and a little bit of caution, because again, I think while innovation is key and we all love innovation and want to support innovation in a business, the idea of innovation is not just for innovation's sake, it's in order that the business succeeds. And I often have to caution customers again of Green Room that, this is a good idea, but unless there's somebody who'll pay for it, then it's because there has to be a channel by which you get paid for it, a CPT code, or some other means by which you get paid for innovation for innovation's sake. Even when it's good for the patient, it's not necessarily good for your business. And my dad has a quote which says, "Be open-minded, but not so open-minded that your brains fall out." So just it's kind of silly, but I guess what I would say is foster a community and a culture in your business that gives you the freedom to expand. Have that brainstorming session, write it all out, figure out all the avenues you could go, but then apply some scientific rigor to that, some metrics of success that are what your business goals and objectives are, so that you can then have the discipline to focus on which areas of innovation that you're really interested in going into based on all of those levers, including the cost, including the regulatory, including, the cost of acquisition of the customer and all of those things. So I'd say be open-minded, apply some rigor, and then focus on the things that you decide are the best pathways.
Wonderful. Shelley, over to you.
Yeah, Kristen, I think that's really important. We talk a lot about products and services and innovation and all of this fun stuff, but at the end of the day, you have to have a really strong business strategy and company strategy for any of this to really work. And I talked a lot today about corporate, but when we look at startups, I think startups are really great at innovation because they're selling you on an idea. So an early stage startup, look at pitch decks, you can get on board with that. They're usually solving a problem in a new way. It's super exciting. Then they get funding, then they build a team, and somehow the innovation goes away. It becomes difficult to prioritize innovation when innovation can be costly. That's why large companies who have bigger budgets only spend about 20%. So I think it's important to adopt a culture of innovation, whether you're a startup, a scale up, a corporate. And the way to do that is always have your bread and butter be that. Always stay committed to your core offering and know what you are and know what you're not. Figure out in your strategy how to design your own methodology for how you're going to think about bringing new innovation in, how you're going to test it, how you're going to validate it with your market, how you're going to invalidate some of your hypotheses as well, how you'll take it to market, and kind of what the life of that new innovation kind of looks like. It's really seeing into the future. We talk a lot about helping our clients prepare for the future. We also want them to reimagine the future for their companies, for themselves. And so taking that privately held company example, I love that example because there's a lot of folks who are older generation who may not understand how to develop something new and fresh for a younger market because that's not them. And they need to bring in younger people to learn from, to query on what's interesting to them and what's relevant. And so I think one of the key things is staying curious. Be and stay curious to what's possible, but also be very flexible on the solution because it will probably change many times in that innovation cycle.
Thank you so much, Shelley. We have a few minutes now for those of you who are here in the audience. If there are any questions, please do type them into chat, or if you're comfortable, raise your hand and we'll invite you, if you raise your hand, to ask the question live. Give it just another minute in case anybody's adding something into chat.
I have a question. Can you guys tell us how Onyx Access works with their clients and our mutual clients to help them create an ambiance of innovation while still remaining focused? I know you have some tools and strategies in that area.
Thank you for that setup. I'll say that we do have a proprietary methodology. We call it EWOD. It's efficiency weighted outcome driven design. So it really, at its core is a model that allows you to find the balance between your core brand, Shelley referred to as your bread and butter, and that measurement of success that you talked about. I like to think about them as guidelines or the bookends to innovation is within a framework. How do we think about reaching this? And so that efficiency weighted outcome driven design is based on some principles from human-centered design, from agile development, from change theory, and from the study of innovation just at an academic level. And so it's this bridge between the practical and the academic. And we heavily weight based on the metric that the client finds value in. So when we're working with a nonprofit, that measure of success isn't margin or profitability the way that it would be necessarily the way that it would be in the commercial sector. That measure of the efficiency weighted outcome driven design is based on a theory of change around the mission or target audience or funding efficacy. And so we're able to use the model across industries in a really successful way. So thank you for asking that.
Yeah, thank you. You guys always have these tools and strategies around these topics, and I appreciate those when you share them with us.
Thank you. And then we do have a question in the chat that I will pose back to you, Kristen. What are some of your favorite sources to learn about innovation? Any blogs, podcasts that you enjoy?
I don't know that I have a specific blog or podcast, but I'm a huge LinkedIn person. I spend my life on LinkedIn, and just friend, all kinds of organizations and individuals for whom I can follow there for their innovative concepts and their warning stories and their supports and camaraderie and community. So yeah, I use that tool quite a bit myself.
It's wonderful. And Shelley, over to you on the same question.
Yeah, I have a book I'm going to recommend and then a PDF. It's a book, but there's also a free PDF online that I think is really a great primer for all of this. The book is The Future is Faster Than You Think by Peter Diamandis. And as someone who helps companies prepare for the future, I told myself, I really need to stay on top of visionaries and of what visionaries are thinking out there. And so Peter Diamandis is one of those individuals. The Future is Faster Than You Think is a fantastic audiobook because it's also narrated by himself and another person. I'm sorry, I'm forgetting their name. But that's really interesting to get you thinking about new things that are happening and where trends are going and what the future might look like. The other one is When Coffee and Kale Compete. I'll post it here in the chat. It's a free PDF online. It's a wonderful book about why companies need to avoid disruption and the things they can do to be more innovative. Thanks for asking that great question. And How I Built This, that's a great podcast.
Those are great. I actually happen to know Peter. It was a family friend. We worked with my father years ago. Yes. So yeah, I love his stuff very much. And I do have some list of things I read for this particular event, and I'll post those on your page, on the Onyx Access page underneath the event materials.
Thank you, Kristen. I love the circles of connection in this space. I will shout out Mark Dancer, who works with our team sometimes around innovation on the supply chain. Since we've talked about the idea of supply chain, he does a weekly innovation newsletter. Very much, if you're in logistics, distribution, or manufacturing, some really great resources to scale there. And then the United Nations has a UN think tank that also has a LinkedIn think tank group. So the United Nations Innovation Think Tank, and it's really thinking on public policy, on the intersection of tech and ethics and innovation. And there's some really interesting elements there. So thank you, Shelley, for sharing that. And thank you for the wonderful question. We are 5 minutes from the end. And so while I never love when Business Bites ends, we have had some wonderful audience questions. I want to thank all of you for coming. I'm going to turn it back over to our friend Jack to tell you a little bit about a survey that can help us make sure that we're creating content that you want to hear from us on. So Jack, over to you.
Thank you, Kelly. This has been an amazing presentation. So thank you, Kelly. Thank you, Shelley, and thank you, Kristen, for all of this. These amazing tools that'll help everyone, succeed and move their businesses forward. I just dropped the link into the chat. So if anyone would like to fill out this voluntary survey, just to give us some more feedback on what we can improve, just to make this topic more relevant to our viewers and to everybody participating.
Thank you, Jack. You may need to grab the link directly from the link. I don't know if that one's going to take it through the Airtable. So you may need to grab the direct survey link. But I also want to let all of you know, we do have another Business Bite scheduled. Our next topic is something that's very near and dear to my heart in this world of change around AI and the many positive ways that AI can help influence and create opportunity in business. There's a balancing act that's at play, and that's around ethics and ensuring fairness, transparency, and equality in particularly AI implementation for business use. So thinking about this, whether you're a startup founder or an executive in an established corporate entity, thinking about some of the bookends that we can put in place to ensure that the tools we're using and the systems we're implementing around AI learning are fair and aligned with our brand morality. So very excited. Hopefully you can join us August 14th from 12 to 1. And with that, thank you for joining us on another session of Business Bites.